Welcome back to the Neurodiverse Voices podcast, and hello, season 4. I'm your host, Andrea Costa, and I'm so grateful to have you on that side. Over the past 3 seasons, we've shared honest, powerful, real stories from neurodivergent people, their families, educators, and mental health researchers. And together, we've been part of a growing movement towards understanding, acceptance, and embracing difference. This season, we are going even deeper. We will be exploring late diagnosis, masking burnout, menopause, mental health, and how neurodivergence intersects with identity, culture, and lived experience. You'll hear from creative minds, parents, and most importantly, from neurodivergent people themselves in all their complexity and brilliance. So whether you've been with us from the very beginning or this is your first time listening or watching, welcome. This space is for you. Let's begin season 4 of the Neurodiverse Voices podcast. Hi, everyone. Another Friday, which means it's time for another interview for the Neurodiverse Voices podcast. And this time I have John Clark with me. So John is the creator of 2 award-winning short films, Aspergers and What of It, and also Snapshots. So he's a filmmaker, a scriptwriter, and a director. And he has lived experience of autism. And I'm very, very excited to hear more about his real life story. Welcome, John.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. Thank you.
Good. So shall we start by you telling us a bit of what has brought you here, your neurodivergent journey? Can you tell us a bit more about that?
I think it's just my life's journey, to be honest, both in my personal career, the way they've intertwined. So I was diagnosed with Asperger syndrome when that term was being used when I was about 4. And I was told at 10, at an age that I could understand. That's when I started asking questions, thinking, what do I fit in? Am I normal? Excuse me. To questions like that. And I can remember thinking, okay, it was a light bulb moment. And then I thought, okay, this is me and who I am. But then as a teenager, I remember that I masked. And when I got to my early 20s, I'd had enough of masking. And it became it was a huge mental fatigue, constantly putting on this front, constantly suppressing how I'm dealing with sensory processing and social communication. And I think what inspired me for it to inform my work is, especially as there was more of increasing awareness and acceptance of autism, you saw more portrayals of autism in the media. And I just decided that I wanted to chime in my own personal lived experiences. And it's sort of snowballed from there, to be honest, and the way that the pair of them have intertwined.
Yeah, it's a common journey. So if we I'm going to just ask about those times when you felt those challenges, with social interaction and all of that. So
Yeah.
how did you feel? Did you have any support at the time because you had an early diagnosis? But how did it feel for you?
In terms of support at school, it was more floating support. At primary school, there was this, they were under the impression that because I was academically intelligent, I was just left alone. But it got to a point, I can remember my mum telling me that there was an intervention, and it got to the point where even the caretaker within this sort of intervention was seeing that he could see that I was struggling. Some days during break time, I would just wander the playground on my own, and especially it was a very confusing time before I even knew all about this. I just thought I was different, I was weird, I was strange. So when I started asking those questions and my mum sat me down and told me all about it, then I realized, right, so that's why this is who I am and this is how I go about and deal with things. I think about things in a different way. And so that came on to secondary school. And a similar thing, there was floating support initially put in place.
Mhm.
But because, again, I was sort of deemed academically intelligent a lot of the time, excuse me, I was left alone. And the irony behind masking at the time, I thought if I show my true self, I'm just going to give bullies more ammo. But it backfired because I was then presenting someone completely different to myself. And as time went on, as I was finishing college and university, I just thought I can't do this anymore. It's too much. And as a result of just being myself, it feels more free. And I mean, I also do remember I did get support college and university, but as well because I was masking a lot of the time, I would hide it from other people because I didn't really want people to know that I was getting this support at the time. So I do vaguely remember kind of making up excuses about going different places when it was support reviews because I was under DSA under university, so all that kind of things. I used to get help with constructing essays and that because sometimes I'd write through something, I'd write through a few paragraphs and it would just look sort of all over the place. And I need someone to sit there and say, does this actually make sense to you? Because I'm looking at all this wall of text and I'm just thinking, I don't even know what I've wrote. I just type and see what happens. And so with that support and like sort of floating in and around, yeah, I think I felt more free to be myself afterwards, I'd say. So
Yeah, it's liberating to understand, and yeah, your story kind of shows that, you know, that moment of your mom sitting down with you and explaining to you. Of course, you had the curiosity as well to ask those questions and try to understand yourself.
mm.
But it's good to see that at least you had some support in school, because it's not the case for many children. So
Oh
thank you
yeah.
very much for sharing that. So let's talk about more exciting stuff, which is your short film, Aspergers, and what of it. I haven't watched this one yet. I have to be honest. So, what has inspired you to tell your story in that way, and how did it feel when the National Autistic Society recognized it and you won an award for it?
I was a finalist for that one, and the
Oh,
so
okay.
that's all right. So the National Autistic Society had a film competition back in 2017. It was called Autism Uncut Film Awards, and at that point, I'd already made a short film. So branching off, when I stopped masking, I just decided I'm going to make a documentary talking all about it, and that was under the title "I Have Aspergers, So What." And with the National Autistic Society competition, the brief was that it needed to be 4 minutes. So I decided to take what I already had, which was a 16-minute short film, and cut it down into a 4 minute short. And in that, as well as I have Asperger's, so what? They both begin with a sensory overload, and that's how I always wanted to give it a go to try and depict what it feels like for me. So when you watch Asperger's and what of it, it opens with that. It's about 30 seconds long, and it's just constant rapid cuts, and that because it was just the way I wanted to try and depict it, especially when there's stresses and anxieties and everything just gets too much. And there were some additional things that I filmed to specifically fit as well. But so I can remember filming additional footage about trying to explain how my words and intent get lost between the brain and the mouth. So I drew sort of a little diagram and added little bits and pieces like that. And honestly, I was just so beside myself that I was selected as a finalist. I genuinely didn't think it was going to happen. I got the email through, I was overjoyed. The entire ceremony was at BAFTA 195 at Piccadilly, and I thought
Okay.
this is incredible. And so my film was in the aspiring filmmakers category, where it was a finalist with two others, and it was just incredible seeing the whole branch and majority of work there. And it come from, so I'd had this creative slump at this time. So the fact that not only was I selected as a finalist for this competition, but when they shared it on their social media page, they had thousands of views, all of these hundreds of comments of people basically saying thank you, and I love this film, I identify with it, this, that, and the other. And it gave me such a much needed boost, because I thought that was the one thing when I started this creative journey, by putting a lot of myself into the work, because I thought, well, if I chime in my lived experiences, I'm hoping that others can relate, others can watch it and think, I can identify with this as well. I relate to how sensory overloads feel. I relate to the frustrations of communication issues, and yeah, and yeah, it was just a
Yeah.
whole incredible experience. And there was me thinking that's where it sort of start and stop.
Yeah. Yeah. It's what keeps us going, isn't it? To have that that fulfillment that we with our projects, that we are actually helping others, and people actually realize that they are not alone. So that's definitely
Mm,
incredible. A massive well done to you. And looking at the way your diagnosis shaped the way you created the film that already existed, and then you just had to kind of adjust towards the criteria for selection. So that's fantastic. And then more recently, there is Snapshot, that one I watched, and I had tears in my eyes. Very good short film. And it delves into the challenges of unemployment and job interviews, which can be quite difficult. And it's not surprising that many autistic people are unemployed, because the workplace and this traditional or conventional interview process is definitely not a fit for many. So tell me more about your experiences, because I'm pretty sure this also came from your experiences of unemployment and going through the interview processes and struggling with that.
definitely. So over the past decade or so, I've literally applied for thousands of jobs, and so a lot of them, you either don't receive a response back, you get an unfortunately, or we regret to inform, or on the off chance of an interview, it doesn't transpire very well. It doesn't pan out very well, because I've often had the issue of being unable to translate what I wrote on the application form into spoken, being able to verbalize it. So, and a lot of the what you see from the interviewers, the remarks, and that I've received similar. A lot of it is based off that. So when I started writing it, those experiences um, pretty much informed the story. And the moment where there's the experiences on the public transport as well, are all based off mine. It's when, because environment and the emotion and what happens on the day always is an important factor to play, especially when there's a lot going on. The fact that you'd be sat on a bus and every noise, every sight, and every smell, everything just grates on you. It's like nails down a chalkboard. And it's that frustration of also being unable to properly express yourself, especially when the thing is, the most difficult thing I've found is hanging on to past and present mistakes. That frustration to be unable to express yourself properly, and when the past and present mistakes collide, and it really wreaks havoc on your self-worth and your well-being. You know, you feel like the worst person in the world because you can't do these simple tasks. You can't go into an interview, you can't get this job, or if you do get the job, you can't retain it. And then you also get caught in these disclosure cycles as well, because you think, yeah, because you think you're unable to do all of these things that everyone else can do, and you just think, am I not good enough? And it just makes you feel like incredibly low. And that's what we wanted, like, I wanted to try and depict in Snapshot. But then contrastingly, you've got the two characters of primary support. So you have this support worker, Janet, and then you have Sandra in the last interview. And these people are based on people that I know, the ones that are accepting and are understanding, the ones that will make reasonable adjustments as well. Because, I mean, that was the main thing with the story of Snapshot, is the fact that these other interviewers, because they think to themselves, you know, that they're sat there and they've got there, but they're unaware that it's always the small distractions, it's always the little things that hardly help, and they all add up. So with the second interviewer who's clicking the pen, then it's clearly grating him, or it's the bright white lights, and it's just everything on top of that, as well as having to try and convey and sell yourself to be able to get up for the job. So, and the fact that it's making those reasonable adjustments so that someone can thrive. And that was one of the sort of important messages that we tried to convey with Snapshot.
Yeah. And I think having those people who kind of get you and support you is key, is very important. Um, I'm also curious to know if you asked for reasonable adjustments and they were just denied, or did you not feel like you would have to let them know that you are neurodivergent so that those reasonable adjustments took place during the interviews?
Again, I think it was just it was a disclosure conundrum. It was almost this cycle, because you think, do I disclose my autism and risk them thinking, you know, what's wrong with him? And there's the risk that if I do get the job and then further down the line something happens, if I have a meltdown or shutdown, and then I've got to explain myself, and then I say, well, I'm autistic, and then they'll probably turn around, or they've turned around and said, well, why didn't you say something in the first place? But then also, on the other hand, if you disclose your autism on the interview, a lot of interviewers kind of see that as a, you know, they almost get put off by it. It's very almost this passive. I don't know about discrimination really, but the fact that, you know, when you do ask for reasonable adjustments, if you try and ask for them either at the interview in specific jobs or while you're working there, I don't know. In my previous experience, you just get the impression that you're asking for the moon, that you're asking for something grand and extraordinary, when all you're asking for is just simple adjustments that will help you thrive. And it shouldn't feel like that. It should feel more accepting. It should feel like, okay, well, if you want to be sat closer to this location, then that's fine. There should be that room for flexibility, because a lot of autistic people, especially those that I know, have so much to offer. But it's these barriers, just these initial barriers, that have stopped them from thriving and progressing, because it's these it's almost these snap judgments that people make.
Absolutely. I think it's unconscious bias, and it all goes back to the stigma that there's still around neurodivergence and this lack of understanding. Yes, we know that things are getting better. There's a lot more information. There's a lot more awareness, but there's still a lot of misunderstanding. We know that it can be quite complex to understand, because one autistic person is one autistic person, and
Exactly.
the uniqueness is so evident that my daughter, for example, she has a speech and language delay. And I think if you don't know much about it, you think that autistic people and children don't just are nonverbal, um, or they all have a learning disability, or
Mm.
so there's still a lot of work to do in terms of informing. And I wish also that there was more curiosity from people to learn more about it. And I feel like employers, when recruiting, should actually be asking these questions, because if we make these more, and I'm going to say normal, even though I don't really like this word, but if we normalize it, if we make it part of a standard process of interviewing to ask, do you need any reasonable adjustments? People will feel more comfortable as well disclosing if they
Absolutely,
need
I agree.
anything, regardless of being neurodivergent or having another type of another type of disability, learning disability or physical disability. So yeah, it's about giving equal opportunities to everyone.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. So in what ways? No, before this one, sorry, I got a bit
That's
lost.
like that's
Um,
okay.
when you were younger, so was filmmaking always your dream, or did your creative journey just took unexpected turns along the way? So when did you find out that you had this creativity within yourself?
Filmmaking's been a dream for me for a long time. I can remember though when I was about 9 or 10, I was trying to work out what I wanted to do. Part of me wanted felt about writing, part of me liked the storytelling, creating aspect of the video games that I played. But it was only when I got to the end of secondary school that I decided sort of filmmaking, because I toyed around with the idea of maybe acting or a route of comedy or something, but I'd thought it just culminated in the idea of maybe being behind the camera, maybe writing and or directing films. And as a result, I just went on this deep dive and it just became this incredible passion of mine. So the sort of films that I've watched over the many years. And I think the unexpected turn in my creative journey has come from writing what I know. So the irony is not lost on me. The fact that by writing about my shared by sharing writing about and sharing my lived experiences, I have progressed a lot more than I thought I ever did. The fact that I opened up and I created these documentaries about myself, and then there was Snapshot. There have been more and more opportunities presented to me as a result, and it's one thing I'm incredibly grateful for. But also, again, there is that irony, the fact that I have to write and detail my struggles that I've had, especially with unemployment, in order to progress. But I think that's where the most unexpected turn in my creative journey has been, is going down that path, because I've always wanted to explore different genres and different kinds of stories. But I think for the time being, um, I'm quite happy. I'm very happy the fact that because there's that sense of vulnerability because they're very
Yeah.
personal stories, and but the fact that when you're reciprocated with nothing but gratitude and love and support, it means the world to me. The fact that I have taken these very deeply personal stories and I've shared them, and people are relating to them, and as a result, it's just yeah, my creative journey is just continuing onwards.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's a beautiful journey you have there. And actually, if people want to watch Snapshot and Asperger's, what of it, where can they find it?
So on YouTube, I have it on my YouTube channel, which is JCLXIV, and there should be Asperger's and what of it. It's also on the National Autistic Society's YouTube channel, but I think you'd have to go a bit of a dive for that one. And Snapshot is currently on the film YouTube channel Omeleto, Omeleto,
Mhm.
and it's there at the moment. And yeah, it's just I'm sure. I'm just hoping that the more people that watch it, I'm hoping they identify and enjoy these stories.
Yes, definitely. I'll add the links to the episode anyway, so that the audience can access both of them easily anyway.
Of course.
And I'm quite curious as well. So creative arts, sadly, or at least that's my understanding, but they they don't give you a financial security because it's an area where it can be difficult. For some months you can have lots of work to do, but then other months you might not. So I'm curious to
Yeah.
know if you are currently unemployed and if you were able to overcome or if any employer actually made those reasonable adjustments for you and if you managed to find a job eventually.
So at the minute, something which I'll come on to later, I do part-time work for advocacy and Oliver McGowan training, but that's
Okay.
sort of like a couple of hours here and there. It's not substantial. And yeah, like you rightfully said, with freelance work, it can be incredibly fickle. So you'll have months and months of nothing, and then you'll have sort of this it's very much like the buses. It's just everything come, all these opportunities just present themselves at once. But I'm sure it would be a dream, really. It would be ideal to have that offer of substantial full time work, something especially more financially substantial and more fulfilling in particular, because that's often the trouble. At the moment, I've not only got to support myself, but there's also my wife and our daughter in tow. And it's trying to be mindful of that because it was never my intention to graduate from university and then have to go on to benefits. That was never the plan. It was just something that happened. I remember at the end of university, I started to panic because I thought I've got nothing at the end of this. And there was initial reassurance, oh, you'll be fine, you'll be all right. But no, I remember receiving my degree in July, and by the October, I was at the job centre. So I'm fully aware of the struggles. My ear is firmly pressed to the ground with their developments and news all the time about what's happening. And again, never the intention. I've always wanted to have that because it's more fulfilling, and the fact that I've had these struggles, all these jobs that I've applied to over and over and over, you get caught in these cycles, and it's just frustrating and feels quite degrading at times.
Yeah. And even now, the government is making cuts on benefits for
Yep.
disabled people and people who are neurodivergent. So I'm really sorry to hear that from your side that that's the case, and it really saddens me to know that this is the case across the country for many other people. That there's definitely more that we can do. Not we, but well, talking about it and putting it out there already, hopefully, is making a difference. But yeah, it shouldn't be this way. And when you think about other than your filmmaking, which is your passion, and what you do for love, what other what other job would you see yourself doing? Because I also feel like it would be very difficult for you to be in a typical office environment, for example, or what would you see yourself doing that's not filmmaking?
Mm. I think part of me would love to expand on the advocacy work that I'm doing at the minute, because that's just something that's here and there.
Yeah.
I think expanding into that because I have a lot I feel to offer in that field in particular.
Yeah. So we need more advocacy roles across the country. So hopefully, yes, that will happen at some point soon. Um, and now another film. So you're now working on. I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce it correctly. Is it Idol? Idol?
Yeah, idol.
idol, um, which sounds incredible. Can you tell us more about the themes it's going to explore and why it was important for you to challenge society binaries?
So when I moved to Peterborough 3.5 years ago, I was trying to network and connect, and I connected with metal arts culture there, and they had a residency that I wished to this like to apply for, and I was just constantly seeing on the news the mainstream narrative, as you said, the social binaries, this dichotomy that either disabled people are perceived as lazy scroungers on benefits, or contrastingly, Paralympic superheroes with unrealistic expectations. So I coined the term idol, and the way I spell it is IDOLE because it's a play on the words idle as in lazy and idol as in idolizing. And of
Okay.
course, that's why there's also a cross through the O. So the eventual aim would be it would be an anthology of 3 short films, and it would be informed by the research and development that I undertook during the residency. So they helped me organise a call out, and I spoke to good dozens of different people, walks of life within various deaf, disabled, and neurodivergent communities, and they would share their lived experiences with me because I felt as well that it's very important to challenge these binaries because of the knock-on effect of it's had on media portrayals. I mean, years and years ago, you had Rain Man, which still there are some people that will refer to it now, which, I mean, back then it is savant syndrome, which is a completely different kettle of fish. But then you also have documentaries and its many, many imitators afterwards, such as Benefit Street. And so you've got all of these presumptions, all of these microaggressions and snap judgments that we almost deliberately just go on benefits and we don't want to do work, when that's not the case. There's literally nothing else for us. So it is either that or we're out on the streets. There's not really any choice. And this is the other thing, especially with the pip cuts as well, that people don't understand. They think, oh, you're getting an extra bit of a side earner here, but people don't realize that money is actually going on helping us thrive and just function on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
And this is what they fail to understand, that we need that money just to be able to get to places and be able to do things as well, because there's nothing else, there's no other support. And it's also challenging how we're human like everyone else. We're three-dimensional. When we're not these cardboard cutouts that can be placed in yes or no tick boxes, we're
Yeah.
people, and especially when it comes to diagnosis, especially when it comes to the medical field, with neurodivergence in particular, it isn't a case of yes and no. It's a case of assessing the person socially, as opposed to, where do you score on the chart, really. And that's what I'm aiming with Idle as well, is not only focusing on neurodivergence, but also chronic illnesses, a lot of hidden disabilities that we can't see. So my wife has fibromyalgia. It's something she struggled with for the best part of 9 years. And the frustration that she's had with previous GPs that other presumptions are made, especially when you get the impression there's an incredibly sort of sexist approach when it comes to GPs, women in particular. So when she just goes and she's trying to share a genuine problem, a genuine ailment, and has been previously dismissed with it's because you're a woman, it's because of your hormones, it's because of this. And it's absolutely disgusting that all of this diagnostic overshadowing, especially with neurodivergence as well. When my experience, I've gone for particular things in the past and it's just been dismissed as, that's just your autism. It's just, and you're not looking at the problem properly. So you've got all of these people struggling and get caught on all of these poverty and medical cycles. They're trying to get by, and they're struggling because they're not being seen or listened to properly. And that's what I was wanting to focus with these three films. But at the minute, where it is, it's a case of funding. That's the where on stage I'm at. I'm hoping in the foreseeable that I'm able to crowdfund it. That's the only route I can see this taking. And if I can get that support and backing, then it would mean the world to me that I'm able to share these other people's lived experiences, and for people to sit up and think and realize we're not all lazy scroungers on benefits, and we're not all of these people, with these yardsticks set. Because there's a phrase in particular that I remember encountering, which I quite love, where someone had wrote, I don't like the phrase, if they can do it, why, like, if I can do it, why can't you? I prefer the phrase, I can't believe I did that.
Yeah.
Because it is, especially with chronic illnesses and neurodivergence as well, people don't see the behind the scenes. There are times when it can take my wife a long time to sort herself out, to get up, to get ready for going out somewhere. If especially those with chronic illnesses, they use an analogy of spoons or energy pennies,
Yeah.
and that, and it's having to spread yourself across the day. And this is what people fail to see, because they just think, oh, they're up and about, they're fine. They don't see the internal struggle. And that's something that I'm wanting to continually challenge at the moment.
Yeah. It's very easy to judge when you're not going through it, and have no visibility of how, you know, how things can be a challenge with simple things, that you have on your daily basis, like getting out of bed, um, you know, brushing your teeth, everything. So yeah, I'm
That's
very
it.
excited. I really hope that you manage to get the funding, and yeah, if we can help, sharing the link for crowdfunding, more than happy to support with that, and also happy to donate, because that sounds very, very exciting. So you mentioned already the kind of impact that you hope to have with Idol. But are you hoping to create an impact also within the industry, not just with the neurodivergent or disability audience?
Hopefully, I think. So if people within the industry see these stories, then I suppose it might actively encourage them to refine their work approach. I know that they already have access coordinators as well as well-being coordinators as well. I think it's just continuing that more positive route, because it's making those reasonable adjustments again, so that you don't have people disabled, neurodivergent, as well as those chronic illnesses and hidden disabilities, not being able to thrive, almost being pushed out. And I'm hoping that by giving them that chance, that, and bringing that further equity into the industry, I'm hoping, and if my films contribute towards that, then all
Yeah,
the better for it.
yeah, definitely. And how do you ensure representation of deaf, disabled, and neurodivergent communities in your work? I think we kind of covered it, but is there anything you would like to add more specifically?
It's just having the stories guided by one or a collection of the lived experiences, which is what I've been doing, rather than half baked research, a quick Google or Wikipedia glance, which it can often come across that way in certain films or programs that you watch. So with the short film Snapshot, the lead actor Josh, who's like, he was absolutely brilliant. He's autistic, and so he was one of 13 neurodivergent actors that were interviewed for it. And this was during lockdown, so we had to do this all via Zoom and self tapes. And I can remember he said that how he strongly identified. He said, "This is my life. This is the sort of thing I'm going through." So when we actually came to workshopping it on Zoom, and then when we managed to film it in 2021, we would workshop the parts, and we'd think, okay, how would you deal with this situation? How would you do this? How would you feel about that? And it definitely helped. He when he spoke about it before, which well, on set as well as in other interviews that him and I have done together, he said about how he threw so much of himself into it. He tapped a lot of his vulnerabilities into the role as well. And I'm sure when you were watching it, I'm hoping that that's what comes across as well. It's because of how he relates to a lot, the frustration of not being able to get his point across. And yeah, it's just, I think that's the key thing, is making sure that you've got that lived experience informing the story, and for it to be sort of person centered and more heartfelt in particular.
Yeah, it's keeping the the authentic. I never know how to say this word. Authentic. That's easier
That's
to
okay.
pronounce.
Yeah,
um,
that's all right.
yeah, and that's how it comes across. It really feels like, he had, when I watched it, that he had actually gone through all of that. And I think that makes it distinct, from, any other media representations that you see, that you feel it's more staged, and because the person might not have gone through that. So yeah, well done again, for that. And has your identity ever been misunderstood, or boxed in by the industry? And how do you navigate that?
So at the moment, because of my area of focus, I do get a feeling that I might be pigeonholing myself. But I am hoping to change that once I've said my pieces. As I've said before, the current work at the minute is very much this is me, this is who I am, and who these people are, and the world and the people that we currently navigate through. I would love to branch out to different genres one day. And I think with being misunderstood, I've often unintentionally rubbed people up the wrong way. I know as well that there's this driving push for more working class writers, directors, filmmakers, and creatives, which I myself am working class. But because of how I write and how I speak, sometimes I get the impression that people think I'm pretending, which I'm not. Not why would I pretend? And that's actually been a genuine problem. There have been some people out there who are middle and upper class and pretend to be working class, which I think is quite obscene. And and that's the thing. I think it goes back to the whole thing about being on benefits and that financial entitlement. There's been often a misconception that disabled people are rich, which we're not. We have the money there to help and support it, and a lot of the time it's just barely breaking even, and all of that is just helping us get by. So I tend to find at times that I have two barriers because I've always been working class. The way I've been brought up and everything, like from when I was younger, and yeah, I think that's where I have my current struggles and barriers at the moment, and it's just hoping to strive for more equity within both fields. To be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really, I don't get it, this pretending, people thinking that you are pretending when, you kind of recognized already that you've masked for most of your life, and just you being yourself. The fact that you speak in a certain way doesn't mean that you are, pretending. Again, it goes back to the misunderstanding, of all of this, and hopefully one day that will change. So you mentioned you deliver Oliver, McGowan training. Can you share what that involves, and why it's so important, such an important piece of the puzzle when striving for disability equity?
So through my research and development with Idle, I was signposted to this line of work. And when I applied so I knew the story of Oliver McGowan. So I'll do a quick run through of it. It's an incredibly tragic story. So Oliver McGowan was this amazing young man, and his life was cut short through poor practice of medical neglect. So he had epilepsy and he was in and out of hospital with seizures. And the way his staff would ignore his hospital passport and they would neglect him and they would continuously put him on this antipsychotic medication that he was incredibly sensitive to and tragically led to his death. And his mother, Paula, is an incredibly tenacious woman. She's campaigned for years to put forward this mandatory training, this Oliver McGowan training, to be taught among NHS carers, doctors, nurses. And the way it works is it's two tiers. So you have tier one, which is training done over webinar and computers and Teams meetings, and tier two is in person where we stand and speak. And so we work in teams of three. There's myself, who is a co-trainer with lived experience of autism. I also have there's also a co-trainer with lived experience of a learning disability. And then there's the facilitator. And we develop the script. We deliver the script, but in between, we're also chiming in our own personal lived experiences because it gives that additional personal human touch. And a lot of people, especially that come away from it, find it more enriching, more enlightening than just reading through the e-learning or the textbook. The fact that they could come away and they've got genuine examples of these people like myself who have stood up and spoke about our lived experiences. And the main aim is to make sure that stories like Oliver's don't happen again, that autistic people and people learning disabilities are listened to. You know, the common mantra that is often pushed throughout is ask, listen, and do. And that's making sure that doctors, nurses, and whoever does that. And honestly, when I first came across this job and I went for the interview, it was probably one of the best interviews that I ever had. I got there were reasonable adjustments made regarding the lights, and I just spoke about a lot of things that I've spoke about with you. I actually shared my film with them, which they thought was incredibly powerful and they loved it. And as a result, I've been doing this part-time work for over a year now, and I find it very rewarding, especially when we're getting Oliver's story across, and I'm as well as the other co-trainer, we're sharing our lived experiences and hopefully making people understand that it's more a social model rather than a medical model, that the person is seen, the person's just seen that it's holistic, and it's just something that I've really enjoyed doing, and I'm hoping helps strive towards disability equity, because if we can get more doctors and nurses, and potentially if this training gets rolled out into schools and prisons as well, the fact that we can have that additional understanding, awareness and acceptance, it will just make life, especially within that field, a lot easier. I think previously spoke about diagnostic overshadowing as well, which is quite a problem. But by having this training put in place, doctors can then see, like, if their autism is either on the medical record or they declare it. And because there's this whole talk about you don't have to have a formal diagnosis. If you know your own mind, you'll know if you're neurodivergent, and that's absolutely fine. And it's making sure that it's not the be all and end all in the spotlight, but also not pushed aside to the background, that it's something that is okay, I know this is here. And if they can see that the person is struggling either with lights or noises, then they can make reasonable adjustments. They can have ear defenders, or if someone's getting fidgety, they might, if they've got a box of sensory toys. And it's all those little things that can just make a huge difference, that this person is able to open up to their doctors and just say what's wrong, or what the ailment is, what the issue or problem is, and then hopefully the doctor will be able to signpost them towards sorting it.
Yeah, that's the ideal world that we are all aiming for, and it's great to see this kind of training taking place as well, especially in the medical world, because you would expect that they would be the ones who are more informed and would be able to support you. And sadly, that's not the case. And we have Oliver's story kind of proving that. So yeah, very grateful on behalf of the community that you are delivering this, and it's a job that you're passionate about. So what are the biggest misconceptions that you encounter around autism, especially in professional environments like film or training?
I think that we all like the same things and behave in exactly the same way. That I mean, yes, we share traits, but a good analogy that I often use in Oliver McGowan that can be applied everywhere. So before, you used to have the spectrum, which was just a line, and it was often the now outdated terms high functioning and low functioning. But a better term now is the spiky profile, which is a circular spectrum, and again, it's all environmentally dependent, really. So within professional environments, it's it'll fluctuate and everything happens day to day. And so with the reasonable adjustments, I'll give you an example with Snapshot. So we filmed it over 5 days, but we ensured that in each location we filmed in, there was a breakout room in case things got too much. And so it was always there. So in case any of us got overwhelmed or anything, we could just go there, just have a lie down, have a breather, because, and I think, with them, the misconception, because on the outside we are presenting fine, we're doing okay, it's a completely different story on the inside, especially if it's a particularly bad day. And I think having the option to, having the option, having those reasonable adjustments, having that more comfortable and accepting environment might help neurodivergent people open up more in particular. But I mean, more misconceptions, I'd say, if meltdowns do happen, a lot of people I've known still think meltdowns are very similar to a tantrum that a child has, which is it's not the case. Tantrums are a form of gaining attention, where a meltdown is everything's reached breaking point and this is too much. I need to leave. I don't know how to articulate this because my brain is so overloaded. And then you've got the internal of a shutdown where you just withdraw and everything closes off. Just the brain needs to reset and you need to decompress. And going back on saying about reasonable adjustments, especially within a professional environment, again, you get the impression that people think you're a bit of a diva when all you're doing is just asking for things here and there. Is there a room where I can go and sit for a minute? Is there somewhere with more dimmer lights because these lights are very overpowering? Is there, and that's all we're asking for, really. And the fact that when people think that we're all incredibly talented and that we all have a special talent or this, that, and the other is not the case either. That we're these savants, But I mean, with me and my filmmaking, I know a lot of people think, oh, it's a special interest in that. And yes, it is. But there are times where I can personally switch off from that, and I can switch off from my disability advocacy as well. It's not the be all and end all. I've got a life outside of all this. It's just, I think the only way to describe it, especially when neurodivergent people have those particular passions and hobbies that they lean into, I think it's just something that you're always drawn back into it. So I'll tend to, if I'm not writing, I'm watching various different things all the time, and I'm always sitting there and I'm always taking note about how scenes start and finish, how it drives towards the next part. And that's all going on internally, and that feeds that sort of passion of mine. With the advocacy, I'll often keep my ear to the ground in terms of news, with the current pip cuts as well. But I mean, there comes a point where you risk burning yourself out, especially if I'm driving myself into this passion for too long and you wear yourself out, especially when there have been times when I've been applying for application forms and similar, when there have been rejections, it can feel very downheartening and you feel like you just want to distance yourself from it all completely. But I mean, when I was mentioning creative slumps earlier, that's basically is what's happened. I'd create all of this work. I'd made these documentaries, and I thought, right, well, I'm done with that now. I'm just going to concentrate on being a dad and being, looking after my wife and all that. And then only then, as always, as is unexpected, then you get people sort of approaching you. I mean, the opportunity for Snapshot came on the back of the short documentary that was screened at the National Autistic Society's
Yeah.
Film Festival. I got approached about that. And it always happens when you least expect it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I have many instances as well of the same situation. Um, yeah, of saying, okay, that's enough, and then suddenly things happen when you least expect them.
Always.
Yeah, always like that. So, as someone with lived experience, how do you balance telling your truth with the pressure to represent a whole community?
I don't feel much pressure in
Pressure. Okay.
representation. That I do this work to share lived experiences and to inspire others to do the same. I think my pressure mainly comes to ensure that the authenticity and honesty comes across more than anything. That was my main thing, especially with Snapshot, was making sure. So we actually, when we first started developing it and we were granted funding for it via BFI, I contacted the National Autistic Society and asked for a few pointers. So in the opening, you have his support worker try and calm him down, and she offers a stress ball. And the hand movement that she makes, that was through a consultation through National Autistic Society, because I asked them, if you have someone in care, autistic person who's having a meltdown, the arms everywhere, the frustration, everything is too much. How would you try to diffuse the situation? And that was one of sort of many techniques suggested, because you want to get it right. There's a film from a few years back from the musician Sia called Music, which I remember got a lot of scrutiny and a lot of backlash for its autistic representation in particular. And I saw there's the use of unnecessary restraint, which if you was to actually sort of use on autistic people, it's horrible. It's just like and it also reminds me as well of what happened to poor Oliver as well. He was restrained in an inappropriate way
Yeah.
when all he was doing, he was stimming, he was trying to vocalize, he was trying to verbalize his concerns, basically. I mean, he was stimming. All he wanted to do was, while he was waiting for another consultation, he got out of his bed and he wanted to pace. But they were saying, no, you can't pace. You've got to get back into bed. And as a result, he would fight. And they thought, well, he's putting up a fight. And do you see what I mean? So it's ensuring that authenticity is there. So in Snapshot, she is there. The character of Janet is helping try and diffuse the situation when it's too much, and it's getting those parts right, and it's making sure that that sensory overloads and that obviously a lot of it comes from my lived experience, but it's making sure that just because it's my lived experience, I'm hoping that others relate and have similar as well, and that's quite important to me with this line of work in particular.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that everyone will see you as this model for how autism displays in everyone. And again, it's very
Yeah,
important to highlight that one autistic person is one autistic person. As
precisely.
I think it's kind of common sense, right? Because even if we don't think about neurodivergent versus neurotypical, we are all unique. We all have our DNA. We are all different beings, and this is what makes the world. In my experience, it's what makes the world a better place, and it's what makes us better persons as well. The fact that I moved to the UK and I'm in Oxford, which is a multicultural city, I feel like it shaped me so much, having expanded my horizons and meeting so many different people from different cultures. And again, we are not
Yeah,
even talking about adding neurodivergence to the mix then, but it's about each of us being unique and bringing our unique talents and values into the world. That's how That's why I use loads of colors, for example, with the podcast, because I really like the rainbow and all of these colors, because it's yeah, to me it's like it's just beautiful, and that's how I perceive, or I idealize the world to be at some point.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for sharing. And now let's talk about you being a dad, and how that has shaped or shifted your perspective as a filmmaker and an advocate.
I think it's kept me grounded, really. I never expected to become a dad, to be honest, but the paternal instinct seemed to just come naturally to me. I grew up around four siblings of my own, and yeah, just a lot of it was just using how my mum brought me up with my daughter. And I think within my work, it's just a sense of trying to represent a degree of honesty and integrity, um, and just hoping that it's something that my daughter can aspire to in terms of whatever she wants to do with her life as she grows up.
Yeah. And what do you learn from her, and how what you learn from her influences how you move through the world?
Keeping that creativity and imagination alive is often lost, to the weight of modernity and adulthood in general. As you grow up, you because you've got other responsibilities, all of that just gets put on the back burner. So it's having that additional balance of seeing the world with that childlike wonder of imagination, but also balancing it out with the pragmatism as well. So I always find it fascinating. She's incredibly creative. She loves Minecraft. She's always making things. She's always drawing. She's always building things with Lego, and they're definitely things that we both try and nurture, and we just feed into her interests, really. And yeah, so
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. I When I was younger, my creative side is still here, because we also tend to think about creativity in the sense of, arts and drawing and writing. But I used to write a lot, and then with time I just lost it, because yeah, you just become busy being an adult, and it feels like you have no time for anything. So it's really
mm.
great to see that you feed onto her creativity, but um, that makes total sense coming from you. And what's one thing you wish more people understood about being autistic and being creative?
That we might express, excuse me, that we might express ideas in different ways. So each approach from each individual is different. And if any issues occur, providing rational and reasonable explanations for any compromises. So I can't remember when I saw it, but I remember watching a video about an autistic person in the workplace, and their boss was getting frustrated at them because they were asking them to do something in a certain way, or they were informing them of a certain change in a certain way. And all the autistic person was asking was why. And the boss was getting more and more frustrated. It was just a story they relayed. And this person was saying how the boss was getting more and more frustrated because they were just asking why. We're not being awkward or anything like that. We just want to know the logic, the reason behind the compromise. So then we can say, oh, okay, now I understand why. Now I can move on with it. And I think we're not being we're not trying to wind people up. We just want to know, well, why is this happening? Why is this change happening? And and I mean, a lot of the time, me personally, I can be quite flexible with that. But I think, especially with employers and just other people in general, it's being mindful, like we've both been saying, about how every autistic, every neurodivergent person is different. And there might be some people that will question and ask why about these different things.
Yeah. And I don't understand really, why is it so difficult to give the background or to explain to someone
Mm,
why this is being asked of you. So Yeah. And what does disability equality mean to you? Not as a concept, but as a lived daily mission, because that's what you do as an advocate.
So the eventual end goal is that autism and neurodivergence are seen no different than the color of someone's hair. As I said before, not spotlit in the foreground, not ignored in the background. It's there, it's acknowledged, but most importantly, it's understood and accepted so that reasonable adjustments and different ways of communicating aren't, overly scrutinized all the time. And I'm aware you'll still get some people, you'll still get microaggressions and snap judgments. You'll still, you will never eradicate that prejudice. Unfortunately, that's something that's always going to exist because it goes back to the preface of, I don't like you because you're different. And that's something that's always existed within our society.
Yeah.
So I think with disability equity, it's just trying to strive for more acceptance as
Yeah.
lived daily mission.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And what's next for you, both creatively and personally? Any aspirations in the near future?
So creatively, I'm working on another project within Peterborough. So it's under the title of What's Changed, and it's looking at the 30th anniversary of the Disability Discrimination Act. And the idea would be we're going to host a series of workshops within the city, various art workshops, and getting various people who wants to come along, the various art forms, so people can either come to something art related or sound. And the idea would be is just getting that creative expression and people answering those questions about sharing those lived experiences and in their words thinking over like the last 30 years or however throughout their lifetime, because the aspirations to get various generations, walks of life, how societal perception of disability has changed. And the idea would be I would collect all of this together and create it as a little short film and prepare and sort of project it in a pop-up exhibition where in the exhibition you would have the other people's artwork. So that's something that's currently in the pipeline at the minute. And I mean, I think creatively, I'm hoping that one day I would love to elongate my short film Snapshot into a feature length. There's so much more to explore, especially with it. With the feature idea, a lot of it would come from my struggles with PIP. So 9 years ago, I transitioned from DLA to PIP. I went for the assessment and they said no. And then a 9-month fight, which almost made us homeless, almost racked us up in crippling amounts of debt. It went you have the initial rejection, then there was the mandatory reconsideration, which it was almost like they did the equivalent of just take a glance at it, and it had to resort to challenging it at a magistrate's court in order like via a tribunal, and thankfully that was successful. But the fact that all of that shouldn't have happened in the first place because I have something that's lifelong. And this is the thing when it comes to the PIP cuts as well. These are lifelong conditions. They fluctuate, sure, but they're always there. I was born autistic, and that's never going to change, along with others and other neurodivergent people and just other chronic illnesses and hidden disabilities. They are always going to be there. And the fact that there's still that mindset of, oh, just because I can't see it, oh, it means it doesn't exist. Yeah. Or, oh, you were fine on Tuesday. Why are you not fine on Wednesday? And then this is the frustrating thing with it. And I think that's one of my goals is to create that film, just to put it out there and say, look, this is my lived experience, and I'm sure there are many other people that relate to this frustration. The fact that we have to justify ourselves. We have to explain this is who we are, and this support is not just all about the money, the amount of other things that PIP can entitle you to, the amount of, so I have a bus pass, which has benefited me. And when I applied for it, they needed a copy of the form, so I had to upload the form. So it's all those reasonable adjustments and those small changes, and it's not all financially based. And the fact that you get the impression that you feel like a burden, a financial burden, it's not right when we're people like everybody else.
Yeah. I'm I'm speechless because none of this should be happening. It should be common sense that we can think about those people who might take advantage of it, but then what about the others who actually need it and need it to survive?
A lot,
So
a lot of those, sorry, a lot of those that take advantage are a microcosm. They're a 1% of a 1%.
yeah,
Just because Joe Blogs down the road did it doesn't mean everyone else is going to do it.
yeah,
It's that one person, and then making that snap judgment, thinking, "Oh, it's such a dangerous precedent." It doesn't. A lot of us, you'll find the amount of um, people within the disabled and neurodivergent community are probably the most honest, hardworking people you'll ever meet.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
we all have our ups and downs, we all have our struggles, but a lot, we're primarily honest. Why would we go out of our way to pretend? You know, you'd make a very good actor if you could pretend all of this. You know, I couldn't fathom trying to pretend my lived experiences. I honestly couldn't.
Yeah, I just don't get it. But yeah, thank you for sharing your experience, and it's very exciting. Those yeah, the creative projects that you have. Um, they yeah I was trying to picture it in my head, the film and all these the creativity workshop, and then having the all the artwork displayed together. It sounds really really good. Maybe I'm able to attend whenever you do the exhibition, so keep me posted on that, please. That would
Oh,
be lovely.
definitely, I
Yeah,
will for sure.
yeah. And going back to money, if someone gave you a blank check and full creative freedom, what story would you tell tomorrow?
If not idle, the the feature length script that I mentioned, I'd that'd be the first one, because getting that out there, the whole "this is me, who I am, this is what I've experienced," and then just going off from there and showing, that creative side to it, all of these ways that I can help depict and portray, and get in a lot of the people who helped bring Snapshot to life on board as well. I've often said as well to the actor in Snapshot, I'd love to work with him again and do a lot more with him, because he was just fantastic, and giving him that opportunity as well. But I think that if not idle, it would be that one. It'd be either or. It's just getting those most important stories out there.
That sounds like, yeah, we just keep dreaming and wishing for a blank check to make dreams come true. It's very sad to see that money still makes so much difference in our lives and the things that we want to do. It shouldn't be. We shouldn't have these. All of our wishes and dreams should not be dependent on money. But it is what it is. And what advice would you give to other neurodivergent storytellers who are trying to break into the film industry?
So I remember being asked a similar question when, so I did an interview with National Autistic Society, and I'd pretty much give the same sort of advice, which is just tell whatever stories you feel most passionate about in any way you want. Find a way to channel and project your vision, either for others to see or simply just for the fun of it. Because when you when you're putting videos on YouTube, a lot of people think, oh, it's about view counts and algorithms and this, that, and the other, which is fair enough for audience engagement. But it only takes that one view for someone to watch your film and think, I'd like to work with you. I'd like to do more with you.
Yeah.
The fact that it took that one person to watch Aspergers and what of it and think, I like what you're offering. And it steamrolled from there. And another thing, it's incredibly difficult, especially to break into the film industry. I mean, I still often feel like, get the impression that I'm on the outside, and
Mhm.
also when I've slowly progressed, imposter syndrome often rears its ugly head, which it's easier said than done, but you have to kind of justify to yourself and say, you are here, you did this work, you shared this work, you didn't just stumble in here, you didn't pay your way in here, did you? And it's very difficult to to try and convince yourself of that, but also to not let any criticism deter you, either like from yourself, if I can be my own worst enemy, or others, and to try and not burn yourself out if writer's block visits, because I've had writer's block before, and you push and push and push, and you want to get the words on the page, but you physically can't. You've got the wall, but in the end, you just mentally burn yourself out. And I think
Yeah.
it's about trial and error, and eventually finding your voice and writing style that chances are others will want to hear, and a vision that others will want to see. And like I've said about creative slumps and wanting to give up, patience and perseverance is paramount, I'd say. Just as much like with any other aspirational career choice.
Definitely. Yeah. And I totally relate with imposter syndrome. I find myself very often thinking, why am I doing here? Is this good enough? Am I good enough? Why maybe I shouldn't be doing the podcast. But then it's what you were saying, if it's your passion and yeah, it's part of yourself, it kind of becomes an extension of yourself, and then you just cannot live without it any longer. So yeah, I totally relate. And who is your biggest support on your journey?
When growing up, it's my mum, bar none. So I was diagnosed with Asperger syndrome when I was 4 by a speech therapist. My mum told me that, she said, your son is a textbook case. And she sat there and thought, well, what's Asperger syndrome? What's that? And she explained how it was on the autism spectrum, because obviously I'm a child of the 90s. So this was a term that was used and diagnosed. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's not anymore. But she took all that information and she went straight to the library. She combed through every book. She deeply researched it, and she supported me in the best way that she could, as well as juggling my other siblings when growing up. And for that, I will forever remain indebted. My mum is one of my biggest inspirations. She's incredibly tenacious. She's one of these people that pull no punches, and you can never put the wall over her eyes. Never. She'll see through it all. And at the moment, at present as well, I've always got my mum. She's always there on the other end of the phone. But also my wife and daughter are a huge support at the moment as well. And it's these close group of people that I'm incredibly blessed to have on my personal and creative journey.
Yeah. Yeah. It's those people are very important to have around us because they make a huge difference. And how do you treat yourself with regards to your well-being?
So this is something I've struggled with for a long time. I only recently had therapy in the last year about it. So it was something long term. And for years, I often used to venture down these forms of extreme self deprecation. And I think it all stemmed from when I was bullied when I was a teenager. So it was, I'd have all of these other problems that I'd go backwards and forwards for counseling for. But well-being was something that it was something that in my mind, it didn't matter. You get into this mind process where you think, oh, it's only me. It doesn't matter. As long as everyone else is okay, I don't matter. It's never being truly kind to yourself. And as a result, last year, it got to a boiling point where I almost pushed everyone away as a result of it. There's so much like that went wrong because it was something that had festered, something that I'd not properly dealt with. It was, and as a result of, sort of my behavior, it was a reason, but not an excuse. But through this therapy, it was thinking, right, I need to deal with this properly. I need to take more time than I've ever done before to self prioritize, and be more kind to my body and my mind as well as my body. Because before, you think, when you get in that mindset, if there's anything that you feel is wrong, any ailment, you think you put it off. You don't go to the doctors. You think, oh no, it's only me. I'm all right. I don't mind. In your mind, you get in that process of I don't matter when
Yeah.
you clearly do. And it's those cycles that, like I said, it's only taken me recently to break free of and say, no, you know what? Actually, I do matter, and and all these people that care for me, all these people that love me, that appreciate me for who I am, and it's also more importantly taking that love and kindness in yourself, because as an autistic person, you're constantly at times at your wits' end with yourself. You have this internal conflict that never ends. You
Yeah.
have on particularly bad days when you're trying to navigate seas of people, when something goes horribly wrong, where your train is half an hour late, or it's this, that, and the other, or it might just be a particularly nasty exchange you had with someone, and that sits with you for the rest of the day, and all of that just continues to add up, and you just keep going back to that mindset of, I'm the problem. I'm not good enough. I'm not, I don't deserve to be here. I don't deserve this. And that's the thing. And as a result, you end up neglecting yourself. So it's it's incredibly important to, if you ever reach that point, to try. And I know it's incredibly difficult when you try to venture down routes of therapy. There's waiting times and this, that, and the other. But I think it's just trying to push through all that, really, and finding that help and support in particular, which is what I eventually got. And I'm incredibly grateful for, to be able to step back and realize this isn't healthy behavior. This is not how you should be treating yourself. This is not how you should be viewing your well-being, you know.
Yeah. It's about recognizing um, that something is off, and it shouldn't be like that. And therapy or counseling helps massively, even though I feel like there's still quite a lot of stigma around it.
Definitely.
But it's also good to see that you hear more and more people using therapy and counseling services, because we are very bad at prioritizing ourselves, and we don't even realize that if we are not well with ourselves, then we will not be well for our children, and for our family who love us and who are around us every day.
It's
So
it's it's that knock-on effect, isn't it?
yeah, 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 definitely. It's the oxygen mask analogy, that if you
Mm,
are on a plane, you need to put the oxygen mask on yourself before you put it on your child. And
exactly.
it's the same. But yeah. And if you were a superhero or had a superpower, what or who would that be? And how would you use it in your advocacy mission?
I'm not sure about being a superhero because I don't know, it's that weight of responsibility. But I mean, in terms of superpower, all I can think of is a way of slowing down time. So there was enough hours in the day to be able to do what I need to do. And I'm sure a lot of people would appreciate being able to do that, especially neurodivergent people, that time to decompress and to recharge, especially when at times it feels like that people in the world around them is moving at a million miles an hour.
Yeah, yeah, it's good. I had never thought about that. But yeah, that would be amazing. If you had that superpower, it would make life easier. Yesterday, I attended a workshop at work, and one of the questions for us to reflect on was, if you had another day in the week, what else would you do with it? So yeah, it would actually be better not having another day in a week, but actually to slow down the time, and then you are able to do more or do things not in such a rushed pace, because sometimes it's what it feels like these days. Everything is a rush, and when you try to breathe, then you have a million things piled on your to-do list, because you try to step back and have a bit of a breath, but then yeah.
Mm.
So that's definitely a great superpower to have. And John, I don't know how much you are into music, but if you are, if there was a song that captures your journey, either as a parent or a creator, or just personally, what song would that be, and why does it resonate with you?
So there's a song by an electronic artist called Square Pusher, and it's called Iambic Nine Poetry. So it's quite there's a lot of jazz and electronic influence in it. And it starts off simple enough. You've got sort of these lovely melodies and harmonies, and the drum beat kicks in. And it starts off very sort of rudimentary, but as the song progresses, it grows more complex. And as the synthesizer and everything builds, it grows more emotionally potent. And there comes a part sort of right near the end where the drums just feel scattershot and it plays faster. And I relate to that a lot because it reminds me of the unpredictability of life and also the way you have to roll with the punches. Just everything, you think you've got a hold of everything, and then you get a curveball like COVID,
Yeah.
and you've got all of these things to deal with. You think everything is plain sailing, and then you've got all of these other things that you've got to juggle and that. And yeah, it's a song that I actually keep coming back to. I don't know why. I find it quite ironic, especially when you can resonate with instrumental music more, because when the music just speaks for itself and breathes as well.
Yeah, yeah. I need to listen to that. I don't know it, but it sounds by the way and I love the description that you created for it. So yeah, I'm quite curious to listen to it. Thank you. And if you could go back in time, what would you tell your younger self?
I'd say you'll be fine, that things will fall into place, just not in the way you're going to expect it to, and
Yeah,
that you'll be happy and to focus on only what matters to you. A phrase that I've often used is if it's a storm in a teacup, it's not worth brewing.
very true. Very true. And what are your hopes for the future?
To continue the filmmaking and advocacy, eventually branch out, as I've said, into different kinds of films, because you do risk that pigeonholing. But like I said, I feel it's important that I tell these stories first and then I move on. And personally, be as good as a father and a husband that I can be. And I'm hoping as well to go back to my driving lessons, because I lapsed a few years ago, and I'm hoping. So I, excuse me, I had a recent diagnosis of late onset type 1 diabetes. So as a
Okay.
result, I now need to apply for a medical driver's license and go through all of that. And I'm hoping that I pass fourth time round. So
Yes, good luck with that. Yeah, I'm
thank you.
sure you will. Like it actually took me three times in the driving test, not in the theory tests. So yeah, there was one of the situations back in the day that I was feeling like, why can I not do this? Why is it that people pass at first and I have to be repeating it? And um, so yeah, we can do it. It just takes a bit slightly longer for us, but good luck with it. And finally, if your heart had a voice, what would it tell us?
I'd like to think it would tell you what I've been trying to tell you today, just through when I talk, write, or through a lot of the work that I do, part of me is hoping that it comes across better, really, than without having that worry of miscommunication, especially with between the mind and the mouth. Really, that's because you just know, especially I know you have gut feelings, but you also have heart feelings about different things. And it's very much like when when you're watching other films and programs, you can almost get the impression that so much heart and soul was put into something. And I think as well, on the opposite end, when you've put a lot of sort of your heart and self into something else, and not just creatively, but within your personal life as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, John. It has been an absolute pleasure to interview you and hear more about your projects and your personal life. Thanks for sharing all that you did today. And yeah, I'll add all the links to your films and yeah, the Oliver McGowan training as well. And yeah, hopefully we can do this at some point when you release Idol, and then you can tell us about it then.
Hopefully. Thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome. It was a great pleasure to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening or watching this episode of the Neurodiverse Voices podcast. Also, a huge thank you to today's guest for sharing their story with such honesty and insight. If you found this episode valuable, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, or follow us on social media. It really helps others finding the podcast. You can find all links to everything we talked about today in the episode description. This podcast is about connection, community, and change. So let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, take care, be kind to yourself, and keep embracing difference.